The most powerful tool we have at our disposal as Linux users is the shell, the command prompt, the bash shell, which is the default shell in most Linux distributions. Now, the shell, it's not attractive, it's not sexy, it's rather plain looking. How can we add a little bling to our terminal? I'm going to show you how. Let's get started. So, adding a little bling to our terminal here, what we're going to do is we're going to install two programs to give us, a little pizzazz. A little pizzazz to our shell. And I'm going to be using Manjaro today in this demonstration. In Manjaro, the default shell is bash, but you could use these programs I'm going to show you today. You could use these in the Z shell, ZSH. You could use these in Fish. But today I'm going to demonstrate this using bash. So we're going to install two programs. One of them is called Neofetch, N-E-O-Fetch, Neofetch. And the other program is called Powerline Shell, Powerline-Shell. Now, Neofetch is a very popular program. It is in a lot of Linux distributions. So this should be a simple sudo apt install Neofetch in some of the recent Ubuntu's and a lot of the Ubuntu-based distros on Arch, sudo pacman -S Neofetch. I believe Neofetch is in the mainline Arch repos, or it could be in the AUR. I could be wrong about that. Powerline-shell. There is a Powerline-shell in the Arch AUR, but do not install that. The best way to install Powerline shell, regardless of distro, is to use pip. Pip install Powerline shell. You're going to need root privileges, so you need to execute that command as root, as su, or using sudo, invoke sudo pip install Powerline-shell. So I'm going to fire up a VM, and give me just a second here. And this is a VM of Manjaro here. Let me log out here and log back in. The resolution is a little weird. VirtualBox Guest Editions. And that was not the right password for this VM. There we go. Alright, so this is OpenBox. I'm going to go ahead and launch a terminal. Looks like the terminal I installed in this VM was Termite, a really nice terminal. Of course, we have our bash prompt here. It's a very plain looking prompt. It's your standard shell prompt. It has my username, DT. It has the name of this machine, DTPC. And then, of course, it has the dollar symbol. The dollar symbol signifies we are our regular user, our home user. If that dollar symbol was instead a hashtag, a pound symbol, that would signify that we were root. Okay, so sudo pacman -S Neofetch. I'm not sure if this is in the repos or not. Okay, Neofetch is in the standard Arch repos. I thought so. And it's probably in the standard Ubuntu repos, Fedora, SUSE, Gentoo. Neofetch, again, is a very popular program. Now that I installed Neofetch, if I type Neofetch in the terminal to run that program, that is Neofetch. Really, really cool. Now, that is really cool, but I don't want to always have to open a terminal and then type Neofetch for that to execute. I want that to execute as soon as I launch a terminal. How do I do that? Well, we need to edit our bash RC file. Let me show you how to do that. So we need to go to our home folder. So let me open up a file manager. I have the PCman FM file manager installed here. So we need to find our bash RC file in the home folder, in the home directory here. There is a hidden file called .bashrc. And basically this is the config file for bash, for the bash shell. Let me open this in Genie where it'll be a little more readable. And let me zoom in so you guys can see what I'm doing here. But anyway, this is our bash RC file. Now you don't want to play around with this file too much unless you know what you're doing. But anyway, we've installed Neofetch. The very last line of the bash RC file, I'm going to type the word Neofetch. I'm going to save this. Let me minimize it. Let me close this terminal and launch a new one. So launch Termite again. And Neofetch now runs as soon as you launch the terminal. As soon as the bash shell is executed, Neofetch is executed as well. Very cool. Now let me show you Powerline shell. So let's install Powerline shell. Again, the best way to install it on any distro where you have sudo already installed, sudo pip install Powerline-shell. If you don't have sudo on your system, like Debian doesn't use sudo out of the box, you have to actually just type su to get to a root command prompt, and then just type pip install Powerline-shell. So sudo pip install Powerline-shell. Give it root password. Alright, pip is not installed by default here on, this was Manjaro's i3 edition, so I actually have to install pip. So sudo pacman-S, and I believe it is python-pip. It's the name of the program in Arch. It is. So this will install pip. And now, if I go back and do sudo pip install Powerline-shell. Okay, it is installing Powerline-shell. Now let me restart the bash prompt. Now, we still don't have our Powerline here. We need to create a config file. Alright, looking back at the GitHub page, to create the config file, you can actually generate a config file with this command here. So, type that here in my terminal. I run the command. And now, when I restart bash, simply type bash in the prompt and hit enter. Okay, we still don't have the Powerline shell yet, because to run the Powerline shell, we have to go back and add something to our bash RC file again, just like we did with Neofetch. Let me show you what you need to add. If we go back to the GitHub page, first, again, bash is what we're using. You guys that are using ZSH or fish, you would edit your ZSH RC file or your fish config file. But in bash, we need to add this to the end of our bash RC file. We need to copy that and paste that in the bash RC. So I'm going to go right here. Actually, I'm going to create a space right above where I pasted Neofetch earlier. And now I'm going to paste this. What I needed to add for Powerline to work. Alright. I'm going to save that. Minimize it. Now let me restart the bash shell again. BASH, of course. And here we are. We have Neofetch and we have our Powerline. Now the Powerline does not look correct. Probably doesn't like some of the fonts we're using. Let me see if I can find a font that will work with Powerline-shell. So actually, Neofetch gives us some system information. The default font here in the shell is Ubuntu Mono 12. Now I set that up because I love Ubuntu's mono-spaced font. It's a beautiful font. It's easy on the eyes. It's easy to read. That font, though, is not really compatible with Powerline. Now there are some versions of Ubuntu Mono that were designed specifically with Powerline in mind, so some of the Powerline glyphs will display right. I know in Arch, in the AUR, there is a package called Ubuntu Nerd Font. Actually, there's a package just called Nerd Fonts, which is a collection of several patched fonts for Powerline. And to install that, since it's in the AUR, I'm going to do Yowert space -S, capital S, and then Nerd Fonts. I think it's complete. We'll just download them all. I'll pause the video for a second while I install these. Alright, so I finished downloading the Nerd Font package. Now this is available in the Arch AUR for those of you running Arch-based distros. Now for you guys running other distros, you know, Debian-based distros, Ubuntu-based distros, Gentoo-based distros, what have you, you may need to install some other font package, but you need to install a font that is patched to properly display Powerline glyphs. So now that I have some fonts for that, I need to actually configure my terminal to use those. Now you guys running things like GNOME, KDE, XFCE, the standard terminals in those desktop environments, you would go to the top menu and choose Preferences, and you'll have like a drop down menu for fonts or whatever, and you just click whatever font you installed for Powerline. I'm using Termite. Termite requires me to edit a config file. So let me open up my file manager, PCManFM here. And the config file for Termite, I believe, is found in .config/termite. Yep. And there's a file called config in that folder. And in this config file, see, where do I have my font set? I actually wasn't expecting to change the font here in this video. That kind of threw me for a loop. I expected Powerline shell to just work. But I need to change the font from Ubuntu Mono to Ubuntu Mono all one word, space nerd, space font. And I'll make it a little bigger. Instead of 12-point font, let's make it 13-point font. And let's save that file. Let's close that file. And close Termite and reopen it. And there we have Neofetch with some great system information, OS, host, kernel, uptime, packages, shell, screen resolution, window manager theme, icons, terminal. What terminal program are we using? Termite. Terminal font now reads Ubuntu Mono Nerd font, 13 pixels, CPU, GPU, memory. Very cool. And then now the prompt, instead of just being a rather plain shell prompt that you're used to seeing, now has this Powerline theme. And if you want to, you can create your own Powerline theme as far as adjusting the colors and the layout. I'm not going to get into that, but you guys that want to know how to do it, check out the Powerline Shell GitHub page. I'm going to link both Neofetch and Powerline Shell's GitHub pages in the description of this video. So you guys that want to, again, add a little bling to your terminal, sex it up a little bit, that's how you do it. Before I go, I do need to give a special thanks to my patrons, all my Patreon supporters, AK, Ron, Mr. Neelypops, John, Brian, Carl, Greg, Carlos, Rob, Matt, Darkwin, Mark, Christian, Jake, Benjamin, Stephen B, Stephen Z, Marcus, Interceptor, Bob, Leor, Omar, Silvio, David, Alex, Bruno, Mike, Daniel, Nick, Eduardo, David, Tony, Michael, and Tabella. You guys rock. You guys help make this show possible. Peace, guys.